Some more examples here of firing and different unit capabilities and different formations. In this situation, I've got a French Leger and square. I've got an English, or in this case the 3rd KGL Hussars, with an open order skirmisher in front and the bulk of the regiment standing behind their own screen in front of them. Up here we have an Austrian firing line, and we have a French Leger battalion in firing line opposite. But the key thing to note here is this French firing line is in morale disorder. One of the figures is being turned around. So when it comes to firing, for squares, they have a 4-inch range, 2 inches normal, up to 4 inches long range. And if you look at the table, you'll find there's a long range line, which you'd utilize when you're firing the square, or the square formation if you're firing at normal square range, which is 2 inches or less. Now, how many figures count when you fire a square? 1/3 of the figures rounded up. 9 figures, it's 3 figures out each face. Basically, it's a face plus a fraction. So if I look on the square table, line 3 figures, comes on down, base chance to hit a linear or open order formation is 15%. And for cavalry, when you shoot at cavalry, especially if it's a full skirmisher, which all cavalry pretty much is, it's a 1/4 target, so 1/4 of 15 is going to work down to 3 and a fraction. But in addition to that, whenever you fire at a mounted cavalryman, there's an additional 1/5 or 20% taken off the total. This basically represents you're hitting the horses and a few other things. And also cavalry on the battlefield has a tendency not to stand around and is always in a state of movement. So it's a lot harder to line up volleys on a moving formation. And of course, being cavalry, it's moving considerably faster than the average plodding infantryman. So that's the reason why we give them the reduction of a 1/5. You would think, actually, that they would be a bigger target. Well, yes, they are. But also you get considerably less number of volleys against the cavalry because they're in a state of charge or a state of movement and they're prancing and moving around. So that being said, it would be the 15, 1/4 plus a down a 1/5. And that will work out someplace around 2 and a fraction, probably 3% chance for hit, which is a pretty low percentage when it's 3 out of 100. In this case, they rolled 94, so they missed. Now, when cavalry wants to shoot back, it has one problem. Skirmishers can never come within 2 inches of a formed unit's firing line. It's just a hard, fast rule. Unless the skirmisher is in terrain, it can never enter a minimum fire zone of a formed unit. So there's no way for this cavalry to get within 2 inches of the square because that would be considered within 2 inches of a formed unit. Even if this unit was in morale disorder, you still can't come within 2 inches of it because it's considered a formed or close order unit. Skirmishers, this rule does not apply. And since cavalry only has a range of 2 inches for its carbines or muskets, or whatever, musketoons, whatever you want to call it, it can't engage a formed unit in the front as a skirmisher. The only way it could would be for the French to actually enter the cavalry's minimum fire zone, or enter the 2-inch zone, shall we say, because cavalry's minimum fire zone is 1 inch. Stay there, and then the cavalry can shoot at them, because you're allowed to stay in a minimum fire zone if the enemy moves into you, but you can't voluntarily move into them, unless, of course, you're actually in terrain. You go up behind a hedge or something of that nature between you and the target. So there's no firing between the cavalry and the square here. But over here, when they fire, the Austrians will fire at the line. It's more than 1 inch, but within 2, so it's a 75% chance. They may or may not cause a loss. But when the French fire back, they're automatically going to use the disordered line, which is exactly the same as firing at long range. So their firepower is going to be considerably reduced compared to the Austrian. And there's also one other major issue. Whenever, again, as I mentioned earlier, that you are in a minimum fire zone unit, this unit cannot recover its morale from morale disorder until it gets rid of this Austrian battalion. So they're going to be down in this firefight for the count from scratch all the way all through to the result. And most likely they're going to break long before the Austrians, because being in morale disorder, if they get another morale disorder result, they're automatically going to rout. So, as you can see in this firepower example, the French firing, when they fire disorder, 9 figures, their best chance is a 40% compared to the Austrians, which is 75 and going up higher.